I think it's absolutely unforgivable for the West to ever say anything about whether or not the developing countries, and that would include China and India, have any right to start moving away from wood and dung, which also kill many, many people while they're burning, toward coal and natural gas and nuclear.
And I've not heard any leader address that issue directly.
Well,
I'd love to ask John Kerry or, your leader, Trudeau, or the people in the EU, where is your morality about these 6.5 billion people?
Well,
there is no good answer.
This is the argument as far as I can understand it. And I've been trying to follow along, let's say on the psychological front, trying to piece this together. It's something like pay now or pay later. Sure, many, many people are going to suffer if we raise energy prices and put on limits to growth, but that will be nothing compared to the suffering of people 50 to 100 years down the road if we don't take emergency action now. So that's the basic argument. Okay.
Nonsense.
Okay, why?
Okay, that's not what the science says. Okay? Let me start with, again, something pretty simple. Let's look at the last 120 years. Okay? Since 1900 to now, the globe has warmed about 1.3 degrees Celsius. In that time, we've seen the greatest improvement in human betterment we've ever seen. The population has gone up by a factor of 5 in that 120 years. The GDP per capita has gone up by a factor of 7. Longevity increased from 32 years to the current 72 years across the globe. Literacy fraction has gone up enormously. Fraction in extreme poverty has gone down, and so on, even as the globe warmed another 1.3 degrees. Now, the IPCC projects, best guess right now, about another 1.3 degrees of warming in the next 100 years. To think that that additional warming is going to reverse or even significantly derail the progress we've had is just nonsense. Okay? And in fact, the IPCC reports say that, at least on the economic front, a few degrees of warming is a few percent hit on the GDP.
Which will increase anyway, substantially over the next 100 years.
Yes. So instead of going up by 400%, it'll go up 385%.
Right,
something,
right.
Which is within the uncertainty, well within the uncertainty of prediction. So the notion of a climate catastrophe is just nonsense.
Okay, so I'm gonna
it
push
says it right there in the reports.
Okay, I'm gonna push you on that, and I'm gonna try to take the hypothetical alternative scientific perspective. So back, I guess it was 100 years ago, 150 years ago, something like that, Thomas Malthus wrote his famous essay on population and extinction in some real sense. And so for all those of you who are listening, you need to know this idea. So Malthus, who was quite a smart observer, noted that in natural populations, there are often cycles of boom and bust. And so under standard natural conditions, a population of animals, and that would range anywhere from single-celled animals, say in a petri dish, up to deer, grazing on the plains, a population would expand until it consumed all of the available resources. That would be mostly food in the case of animals. And then having overconsumed would precipitously collapse. And that's balanced in the natural world to some degree by predation and the competition between different species. But fundamentally,
between species, yeah.
Right, but fundamentally, given limited resources, a given population will expand until it exceeds the carrying capacity of the environment. Now, Malthusian biologists assumed that model was relevant to human beings by assuming that we were subject to the same constraints. And so you really saw this kicking into high gear in the 1960s, where people like Paul Ehrlich, who has plenty of sins on his conscience, let's say, made the case in the mid-60s, along with the Club of Rome, that by the year 2000, we'd have so many bloody mouths to feed on the planet that commodity prices would shoot through the roof and everyone would starve.
I remember reading, as you probably did, the Limits to Growth, right? The Forrester book, right?
Right, and the time-
Of course, we know now, yes.
Well, and the
Go ahead.
time frame prediction was the year 2000. Now, one of the things we should point out that if you're putting forward a scientific hypothesis that's testable and falsifiable, it's incumbent upon you to specify the appropriate time frame. You don't get to say the human race is heading for an uncontrollable Malthusian catastrophe sometime in the next 10,000 years. It's like you can just go away with those ideas. If you can't specify the damn time frame,
Right.
then you should shut the hell up.